The candlelight threw shadows across Vanessa's face in a way that should have been romantic. Instead, it made her look like a stranger. Arthur Penhaligon sat across from her at Marcello's, the same Italian place where they'd celebrated his 50th birthday. His 55th, every milestone since they'd married 16 years ago. The leather booth creaked beneath him as he shifted, his charcoal Tom Ford suit perfectly pressed, his silver hair combed back in the same style he'd worn since his 40s. 62 years old today. 62 years of living, learning, building. The restaurant hummed with the usual Friday night energy. Silverware clinked against porcelain. A couple 3 tables over laughed too loudly over wine. The sommelier moved between tables like a ghost in a vest. Arthur noticed these things. He'd always noticed everything. It was what made him dangerous in his previous life as a forensic accountant. The details, the patterns, the things people thought were too small to matter. "You're not eating," he said, gesturing to her untouched sea base. Vanessa's fingers, tipped with acrylic nails the color of millennial pink, fresh from that morning's appointment, drummed against the white tablecloth. She wore a dress he didn't recognize, tight, young, the kind of thing women wore to clubs, not to birthday dinners with their husbands. Her blonde highlights caught the light fresh from the salon he paid for. Her Botox was recent. He could tell from the way her forehead didn't move when she frowned. "I'm not hungry," she said. Her voice had that edge to it, the one that had been growing sharper over the past year. Arthur cut into his veal. The knife slid through the meat with barely any resistance, perfectly cooked as always. He'd learned to appreciate quality. That's what happened when you spent 4 decades tracking money through corporate mazes, finding the pennies hidden in millions, the fraud buried in footnotes. You learned that cheap things were never worth it. Quality cost more, quality lasted. "Arthur." Vanessa's voice cut through his thoughts. He looked up. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at something in her lap. Her phone, probably. She'd been glued to that thing for months. Instagram, TikTok, whatever platform promised her an audience for her lifestyle content. He'd funded 2 nose jobs, a breast augmentation, lip fillers, and a personal trainer named Julian, who charged $300 an hour to tell her things she could read in any fitness magazine. Vanessa, he said her name calmly. 30 years of depositions and courtrooms had taught him that the calmest voice in the room was always the most powerful. She reached into her Hermes bag, the one he'd bought her for Christmas, the one that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and pulled out a manila envelope. Not a gift box, not a card, an envelope. The sound it made when she slid it across the table was obscene in its simplicity, a whisper of paper on cloth. Arthur's fork paused halfway to his mouth. He set it down slowly, precisely, the tines clicking softly against the edge of his plate. "What's this?" "Divorce papers." She said it like she was ordering coffee, casual, flat. "I've already signed them. My lawyer says you should have your attorney look them over, but honestly, it's pretty straightforward." The word straightforward echoed in Arthur's mind. Straightforward. Nothing in his life had ever been straightforward. He'd spent his career unraveling the deliberately complicated, finding the truth in labyrinths of corporate deception. He'd testified in federal court 17 times. He'd sent 4 CFOs to prison. He'd retired at 59 because he'd earned enough, saved enough, invested enough to never work again if he chose. And his wife of 16 years thought divorcing him was straightforward. "It's your birthday," she continued, as if he might have forgotten. "I thought it would be, I don't know, a clean break. New year, new you. Well, new me, I guess." Arthur didn't open the envelope. He studied her face instead, the way her eyes wouldn't quite meet his, the way she kept touching her phone like it was a security blanket, the way she breathed, quick, shallow, nervous, despite her practiced casualness. "Why?" His voice was still calm, still controlled. "Why?" She laughed. It was a bitter sound, foreign in her throat. "Arthur, look at yourself. You're 62. You spend your evenings reading books. You go to bed at 10. You wear the same suits you've worn for a decade. You're old." There it was, the word, old. "I'm 41, she continued, and now there was heat in her voice, passion. More passion than he'd heard from her in years. "I have a whole life ahead of me. I need vibrancy. I need energy. I need someone who wants to live, not just exist. Someone, not something. Someone. Arthur folded his hands on the table. His wedding ring caught the candlelight, platinum, simple, classic. He'd chosen it because it would last forever. Platinum didn't tarnish, didn't corrode, didn't change. Someone, he repeated. You mean Julian? Her face flushed. Got her. This isn't about your lifestyle coach who's 28 years old and drives a leased BMW he can't afford. That's someone? You had me followed. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I didn't have to. Arthur picked up his wine glass, a 2015 Barolo, $90 a bottle, and took a small sip. Let it rest on his tongue. Tasted the oak, the cherry, the thyme. Sao tagged him in 14 Instagram posts last month. You used the gym's geolocation. He commented on your photos. You liked his. It's all public, Vanessa. I didn't need a private investigator. I just needed eyes. She stood abruptly. Her chair scraped against the floor. Several diners turned to look. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she hissed, leaning forward. You analyze everything. You make everything a case study. You're cold, Arthur. You're calculating. You're old. I need warmth. I need spontaneity. I need... My money, Arthur finished quietly. She stopped. Her mouth hung open for just a second, long enough for him to see he'd struck bone. That's not... This isn't about... The papers, Vanessa. What do they say? She swallowed, looked away. Community property split. California law. 50-50. Arthur finally picked up the envelope, felt its weight. Legal paper was heavier than regular paper. Most people didn't know that, but Arthur knew. Arthur always knew the details. I'll have my attorney review them, he said. You'll cooperate? She sounded surprised, almost disappointed, like she'd wanted a fight. I'll have my attorney review them, he repeated. You'll hear from her next week. Her? Arthur smiled. It was the first smile he'd allowed himself all evening. Small, controlled. The smile of a man who'd played chess for money and never lost. Her name is Eleanor Sterling. Perhaps you've heard of her. The color drained from Vanessa's face. Oh yes, she'd heard of her. Eleanor Sterling, the Iron Lady of Los Angeles family law, the attorney who'd taken 3 Hollywood producers for everything they had, the woman who'd made a studio executive cry during a deposition, the legend who charged $1,500 an hour and was worth every penny, the attorney who was 62 years old and didn't give a damn what anyone thought about it. Arthur, wait. Maybe we can talk about this. Maybe we don't need lawyers. Maybe we can just... Happy birthday to me, Arthur said softly, standing. He placed $300 bills on the table, enough to cover dinner and a generous tip. He'd always tipped well. It was a sign of character, how you treated people who served you. Enjoy your sea bass, or don't. I really don't care anymore. He walked out of Marcello's into the Los Angeles night. The air was cool for September, carrying the salt smell of the Pacific 15 miles away. His Audi was parked on the street. A 2019 A8 paid in cash, midnight blue. He slid into the leather seat that molded to his body like a glove and sat there for a moment in the silence. Then he pulled out his phone, a simple iPhone, no games, no social media, and scrolled to a contact he'd saved 3 months ago, when he'd first started suspecting, when he'd first started preparing. The contact read, Eleanor Sterling, Esker. He pressed call. She answered on the second ring. Arthur Penhaligon. I've been expecting your call. Her voice was silk over steel, cultured, confident, the voice of someone who'd won more battles than she'd lost. How did you know I'd call tonight? He asked. Because you're not a man who waits, Eleanor said. He could hear the smile in her voice. And because I did my homework on you the day you first contacted me. Former forensic accountant. Retired at 59 with a portfolio worth 8 figures. Married to a woman 21 years your junior, who spends money like water, and whose social media presence suggests an affair with a personal trainer. You're methodical, Arthur. You don't call lawyers until you're ready to pull the trigger. So, she served you. 20 minutes ago, at dinner, on my birthday. Classy. Eleanor's tone was dry as bone. Did she at least let you finish your entree? I lost my appetite. Then let's give you a new one. For justice. Come to my office tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring the papers. Bring your financial records. Bring your anger, but keep it cold. Heat loses cases. Ice wins them. I'll be there. Arthur. Her voice softened just a fraction. Happy birthday. And welcome to the best year of your life. The year you remember that age isn't a weakness. It's a weapon. She hung up. Arthur sat in his car, staring at the restaurant through the windshield. He could see Vanessa still sitting at their table, phone pressed to her ear. Calling Julian, probably. Celebrating, thinking she'd won. He started the engine. Tomorrow, the real game began. The offices of Sterling and Associates occupied the entire 14th floor of a building on Wilshire Boulevard, the kind of address that whispered money without shouting it. Arthur arrived at 8:50 a.m., 10 minutes early, another habit from his forensic days. People who arrived early were in control, people who arrived late were desperate. The elevator was all mirrors and brass, and Arthur used the ride up to straighten his tie. Italian silk, deep burgundy, paired with a charcoal suit that had been tailored on Savile Row 8 years ago. Tad still fit perfectly, because Arthur had maintained his weight within a 5-pound range for the past 20 years. Discipline. Another weapon people underestimated in older men. The elevator chimed at 14. The doors slid open to reveal a reception area that looked like it belonged in a museum. Marble floors, original artwork. A reception desk made of what looked like a single piece of walnut, behind which sat a young woman, mid-20s, impeccably dressed, who smiled at him with professional warmth. "Mr. Penhaligon, Ms. Sterling is expecting you. Conference room A, straight down the hall, last door on your left." He walked past associates' offices, young lawyers in shirt sleeves hunched over documents, highlighters in hand, coffee cups forming rings on expensive desks. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with expensive perfume and the chemical tang of laser printer toner. These were the trenches of family law, where fortunes changed hands and lives were dissected with legal precision. Conference room A had a view. 16 miles of Los Angeles sprawled beneath him, from the towers of downtown to the hazy suggestion of the ocean. The morning sun turned the windows into sheets of gold. And sitting at the head of the conference table, reading a document through cat-eye glasses that probably cost more than Vanessa's last Botox session, was Eleanor Sterling. She didn't look up immediately. Arthur appreciated that. She was making a point. Her time was valuable, and he would wait until she was ready. He'd done the same thing countless times in depositions, the power move of the professional. When she finally did look up, removing her glasses and setting them on the table with a decisive click, Arthur felt something he hadn't felt in a long time when facing an adversary. Respect. Eleanor Sterling was 62 and wore it like armor. Her hair was silver gray, cut in a sharp bob that framed a face that had earned every line through years of courtroom warfare. She wore no makeup except a dark red lipstick that matched her nails. Her suit was Chanel. He recognized the buttons, the cut. Probably $10,000 worth of French craftsmanship. No Botox, no fillers, no apologies. She looked like what she was, a woman who'd won millions of dollars for her clients and didn't need to pretend to be younger to do it. "Arthur Penhaligon." She stood, extended her hand. Her grip was firm, her skin cool. "Sit. Coffee?" "Black, please." She poured from a French press on the credenza, real coffee, not the Keurig swill most offices served, and slid a cup across the polished table. The china was Wedgwood. Of course it was. "You brought the papers," she said, gesturing to the envelope he'd set on the table, "and 6 years of financial records." He placed a USB drive next to the envelope. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, property records, everything. Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "You prepared this before she served you." 3 months ago, when I first suspected. "What tipped you off?" Arthur took a sip of coffee. It was perfect. She started going to the gym 5 times a week. Vanessa had never voluntarily exercised in the 14 years I'd known her. Then came the Instagram account, the new wardrobe, the sudden interest in wellness, and the expenses. He pulled out his phone, navigated to a spreadsheet. In the past 8 months, she's spent $62,000 on what she categorizes as health and fitness. That includes Julian's training fees, a nutritionist, supplements, workout clothes, and a juice cleanse retreat in Malibu that cost $8,000 for 5 days. Eleanor whistled softly. She's not subtle. She never had to be. I never questioned her spending. I made enough that it didn't matter, or so I thought. Arthur set down his cup. Then last month I found the account. Tell me. I was reviewing our joint credit card statement. Just habit, I still review everything. And I found a charge for a fund transfer service. $5,000. When I looked deeper, I found she'd opened a separate checking account in her name only. She's been moving money into it for 11 months. So far, she's accumulated nearly $80,000. Eleanor pulled out a yellow legal pad, paper, not a tablet, and began making notes with a fountain pen. Arthur noticed the pen, a Mont Blanc Meisterstück, the 149 model, the same pen he carried, the pen of people who believed things should be built to last. Let me guess, Eleanor said, still writing. She thinks you don't know about the account. I haven't told her. I wanted to see how much she'd take. Turned out she got nervous at 80, probably worried I'd notice, so she served the papers instead. Smart woman. Stupid, but smart. Eleanor looked up. Here's what she's thinking. She gets served. You're emotional. You're hurt. You hire a mediocre lawyer or try to settle it yourself because you're too old to fight. She gets half of everything in the community property split, plus keeps the $80,000 she already stole, and walks away with enough to fund her new life with the boy toy. Julian, the lifestyle coach. Eleanor's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. 28 years old. I pulled his social media last night. He calls himself an entrepreneur and a mindset specialist. His LinkedIn says he has a certificate in holistic wellness from an online school that doesn't exist anymore. He drives a BMW 430i that's leased, lives in a studio apartment in Culver City that rents for $2,000 a month, and posts approximately 40 inspirational quotes per week about living your best life and age is just a number. Arthur felt something loosen in his chest, a knot he hadn't known was there. You did your homework. Arthur, I don't take cases I'm not going to win, and I certainly don't take cases at my hourly rate unless I'm going to enjoy winning them. She leaned back in her chair. Your wife made a mistake. Want to know what it was? Underestimating me. Close. She underestimated what old actually means in a legal battle. Eleanor tapped her pen against the pad. She thinks old means slow, tired, beaten. But you know what old really means in family law? It means documentation, it means records, it means experience. Young people live on their phones, everything digital, everything in the cloud, everything deletable. But men like you keep paper trails, you save statements, you remember details. You've been documenting your life for 40 years out of professional habit. She was right. Arthur had boxes of financial records in his study dating back to his 20s. Every tax return, every investment statement, every major purchase. He'd been trained to track money, and that training had become part of his DNA. So, here's what we're going to do, Eleanor continued. We're going to let her think she's winning. We're going to let her lawyer, and she'll have hired someone cheap, someone young, someone who thinks energy beats preparation, file motions and make demands. We're going to let her get comfortable. And while she's getting comfortable, you and I are going to build a case so airtight that when we walk into that mediation room, we're not negotiating, we're dictating terms. What about the $80,000 she stole? Stole is such an ugly word. Let's call it unauthorized transfer of community funds, which in California means she has to give it back in the settlement, plus we can argue for reimbursement and possibly even sanctions. Eleanor smiled. But here's the beautiful part. We're not going to mention we know about it, not yet. Why not? Because she's going to lie about it, in her financial disclosure, in her deposition, on the record. And when she does, we're going to have bank records proving she committed perjury. Do you know what happens to people's credibility when they perjure themselves in family court, Arthur? It disappears. It gets atomized. Every single thing she says after that becomes suspect. Every claim, every demand, every tear she cries becomes theater, and judges hate theater. Eleanor stood, walked to the window. The morning light turned her silver hair into something precious. Your wife thinks this is about age. She's wrong. This is about wisdom versus impulse, experience versus enthusiasm, and in court, experience wins, every single time. Arthur stood as well, moving to join her at the window. They were the same height, the same age, the same level of exhaustion with people who thought youth was the only currency worth having. How long will this take, he asked. 4 to 6 months, maybe less if her lawyer is as incompetent as I suspect. Maybe more if she tries to fight. Eleanor turned to him. But Arthur, I need to know something. What do you want out of this? Because I can get you several different outcomes. I can get you a clean 50-50 split with no alimony, that's the baseline. I can probably get you 60-40 in your favor if we prove the unauthorized transfers and make a case for financial misconduct. Or, she paused, I can destroy her. I can make sure she walks away with nothing but debt and regret. But that option is expensive, and it's mean, and it requires you to be absolutely certain that's what you want. Arthur thought about Vanessa's face across the table last night, the casual cruelty of serving papers on his birthday, the dismissive way she'd called him old, the contempt in her voice when she talked about his reading, his routine, his life, the life he'd built, the discipline he'd maintained, the success he'd earned. I want her to understand, he said slowly, that old doesn't mean defeated. I want Julian to see exactly what kind of woman he's hitching himself to. And I want everyone who reads about this case, because these things get around, don't they, to know that experience isn't something to mock. It's something to fear. Eleanor's smile was like sunrise. Then let's go to war. Arthur walked Eleanor through 16 years of marriage. The prenup he'd foolishly waived, because Vanessa had cried and said it meant he didn't trust her. The way she'd slowly escalated her spending as his business grew. The plastic surgeries, the cars, she was currently on her 3rd Range Rover, the girls' trips to Cabo and Miami and Scottsdale that cost $15,000 a pop. She came into the marriage with nothing, Arthur explained, pulling up a spreadsheet on Eleanor's computer. I was already established, made partner at my firm at 31, built a client list that included 3 Fortune 500 companies. When we married, I was worth about $4 million. Now I'm worth just over 12. And she contributed? She was a paralegal when we met. Made $35,000 a year. Quit after we got married because I made enough for both of us. Arthur scrolled through the data. I never minded supporting her. That was the deal. I worked, she maintained the home. Did she? Eleanor asked quietly. Maintain the home? Arthur paused, thought about it honestly. We have a housekeeper, a gardener. We eat out 4 nights a week, so... No, not really. So you supported her financially. She contributed no income, provided minimal domestic labor, and spent an average of... Eleanor calculated quickly, about $90,000 a year on personal expenses. Clothes, beauty treatments, travel, entertainment. That sounds right. And now she wants half of everything you've built, plus the freedom to spend your money on a 28-year-old who probably can't spell fiduciary. Arthur laughed. It felt good. That's about the size of it. Eleanor stood, paced the conference room. Here's what I need from you, Arthur. I need every receipt, every statement, every record of every dollar she's spent in the past 6 years. California has a 6-year look-back period for financial misconduct. I need proof that she's been wasteful with community assets. I need documentation of every luxury purchase, every unnecessary expense, every dollar that went to maintaining her lifestyle rather than building your mutual future. I have it all. Every transaction coded and categorized, force of habit. Of course you do. Eleanor turned to face him. You're a forensic accountant. You probably can't help yourself. I can't, Arthur admitted. Even in retirement, I still review our finances monthly. I still track every investment. I still care about details while your wife thought you were just being boring. Eleanor shook her head. Arthur, she handed us this case on a platter. She's committed financial misconduct. She's probably going to lie about it under oath, and she's doing it all while posting incriminating evidence on social media. This isn't a war. This is target practice. When do we start? We already have. I'm filing our response to her petition tomorrow. We're going to dispute her characterization of property, dispute her request for support, and we're going to request full financial disclosure. She'll have to produce every bank statement, every credit card bill, every account. And when she does, Eleanor smiled that dangerous smile again. We're going to find everything she tried to hide. Arthur felt something he hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Power. Not the power of money or success. He'd had that for decades. This was different. This was the power of righteous anger backed by meticulous preparation. This was the power of being old enough to know better and smart enough to prove it. Vanessa's lawyer, a man named Derek Chen, 34 years old, 5 years out of law school, filed a motion to dismiss several of their claims as overly aggressive and retaliatory. Eleanor responded with a motion of their own, a request for an emergency accounting of community assets, citing credible evidence of financial misconduct and asset concealment. The judge, a woman named Patricia Valdez, 59 years old, 23 years on the bench, granted Eleanor's motion and denied Chen's. First blood to the old guard. Arthur met with Eleanor twice a week, always in that same conference room, always with the same precision. They reviewed Vanessa's financial disclosures line by line. They found discrepancies, small ones at first, a charge card she'd forgotten to disclose, a savings account with $8,000 that she'd listed as closed when it was very much open. Then Eleanor's investigator, a former FBI forensic accountant named Marcus, 67 years old, beard like Hemingway, mind like a steel trap, found the real prize. "She's been paying Julian under the table," Marcus announced at their fourth meeting. He spread printouts across the conference table. "Look at these Venmo transactions. Dinner, groceries, gas money. She's been sending him $500 to $1,000 a week for the past 7 months. Total disbursement, approximately $28,000. On top of his training fees," Arthur noted. "Which she pays through the gym," Marcus confirmed. "That's another $18,000 for the year, so she's spending $46,000 annually on this kid." Meanwhile, he pulled out another sheet. "She claimed in her financial declaration that her monthly expenses are only $4,000. Doesn't add up, does it?" Eleanor was already making notes. "This is spoliation of community assets, arguably dissipation. And it's all documented in her own Venmo history because she's too young and stupid to know that Venmo transactions are discoverable." She looked up at Arthur. "Do you want to know the best part? Tell me. She made some of these transfers while you were still living together, which means she was actively moving money to her affair partner while still enjoying the benefit of your income and support. In California, that's a factor the court can consider when dividing property. It shows bad faith." Arthur felt his jaw tighten. "So what do we do with this?" "Nothing. Yet." Eleanor capped her pen. "We let her dig deeper. Her financial disclosure is incomplete and inaccurate. She's going to have to amend it. And every time she amends it, every time she adds an account she forgot or corrects a number she estimated wrong, she looks less credible. By the time we get to mediation, the judge is going to view everything she says with suspicion. And then? And then we bring out the Venmo records, the secret account, and the $46,000 she spent on her boyfriend. And we watch her lawyer try to explain why his client deserves half of your assets when she was stealing from the community to fund an affair." Marcus laughed. "I've been doing this for 35 years, and I've never seen anyone torpedo themselves this thoroughly. It's almost sad." "Almost," Eleanor agreed, "but not quite." Julian had to wait in reception while Vanessa was questioned, but his presence was a statement. "I'm here now. I'm her support. I'm the young one." Arthur arrived with Eleanor 10 minutes before the scheduled start time. They'd prepared for 3 days. Eleanor had drilled him on every possible question, every potential trap. "Don't volunteer information," she'd instructed. "Answer exactly what's asked, nothing more. Let them work for every detail." The deposition room was smaller than the conference room, more intimate. Vanessa sat on one side of the table with her lawyer, Derek Chen, who looked nervous. Arthur and Eleanor sat across from them. A court reporter, an elderly woman with fingers that flew over her stenography machine like a pianist, sat at the head of the table. Vanessa looked good. Arthur had to admit that. The money he'd spent on her appearance had purchased something. But there was a hardness to her now, a brittleness. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Chen started with the standard questions: name, address, occupation, date of marriage, soft balls, establishing the record. Then he got to finances. Mr. Penhaligon, you've characterized my client's spending as excessive. Can you quantify that? Yes, Arthur said calmly. In the past 6 years, Mrs. Penhaligon has spent approximately $540,000 on personal expenses. That's an average of $90,000 per year. This includes clothing, beauty treatments, travel, and entertainment. And you tracked all of this? I track all community expenditures. It's habit from my career. A career you retired from 3 years ago. Correct. So you've had a lot of free time. Have you spent that time surveilling my client? Eleanor spoke before Arthur could respond. Counselor, reviewing community financial records isn't surveillance. It's basic fiscal responsibility. But if you'd like to characterize prudent financial management as surveilling, I'm happy to let that characterization stand on the record. Chen's jaw tightened. Mr. Penhaligon, would you say you're a controlling person? Objection, Eleanor said smoothly. Calls for speculation and is outside the scope of financial discovery. But you can answer if you'd like, Arthur. Arthur smiled slightly. I'm a precise person. I built a career on precision. If that's controlling, then yes, I'm controlling. The deposition continued for 4 hours. Chen tried to paint Arthur as a miser, a tyrant, a man who monitored his wife's every movement. Eleanor objected to most of it. Arthur answered the rest with the kind of calm that only came from 40 years of dealing with hostile attorneys. He never raised his voice, never showed anger. He simply stated facts, supported by documents that Eleanor produced from her leather briefcase like a magician pulling rabbits from a hat. Receipt for Range Rover, $87,000. Receipt for breast augmentation, $12,000. Receipt for Cabo trip, $15,400. Receipt for Hermes bag, $18,000. By hour 3, Chen looked exhausted. Vanessa looked furious. We're done here, Chen finally said. We'll reconvene after my client's deposition. Of course, Eleanor said pleasantly. We're looking forward to it. In the interim, Eleanor filed another motion. A request for sanctions based on Vanessa's incomplete financial disclosure. She's amended her disclosure 3 times, Eleanor explained to Arthur. Each time, she's added accounts she forgot. That's not forgetfulness, that's concealment. The hearing on the sanctions motion was short. Judge Valdez was not amused. Mrs. Penhaligon, the judge said from the bench, peering over her reading glasses, this court does not appreciate incomplete disclosures. You are ordered to produce a complete and accurate accounting of all assets, accounts, and liabilities within 14 days. Failure to do so will result in monetary sanctions and may result in an adverse inference regarding the completeness of your disclosures at trial. Do you understand? Vanessa, standing next to Chen, nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Excellent, because I won't tell you again. When they walked out of the courtroom, Arthur saw Julian waiting near the elevators. The young man was on his phone, texting, uninterested in the proceedings that would determine his girlfriend's financial future. Eleanor saw him too. She leaned close to Arthur. That's the thing about young people in relationships with older people for money. They don't actually care about the details. They just want the results. He's going to be very disappointed, Arthur said. I'm counting on it. But he hadn't been able to coach her on the substance. Eleanor began gently. Standard questions, background, employment history, the early days of the marriage. Then she shifted. Mrs. Penhaligon, you've testified that your monthly expenses are approximately $4,000, is that correct? Yes. Does that include your gym membership? Yes. And personal training sessions with Julian Torres? Vanessa hesitated. Yes. How much do you pay Mr. Torres per month for personal training? I'm not sure, maybe 300? Eleanor slid a document across the table. This is a statement from Equinox showing that you pay Mr. Torres $300 per session, and you have 3 sessions per week. That's approximately $3,600 per month. Does that refresh your recollection? Vanessa's face flushed. Yes. I guess I underestimated. So your actual expenses are at least $7,600 per month, not $4,000. If you say so. I don't say so, Mrs. Penhaligon. The records say so. Eleanor pulled out another document. Let's talk about your Venmo account. Arthur watched Vanessa's face go pale. Do you have a Venmo account? Yes. Do you use it to send money to Julian Torres? Sometimes, for expenses. Like if we go to dinner and he pays, I reimburse him. How often do you go to dinner with Mr. Torres? I don't know, maybe once a week. And how much do you typically send him for these dinners? Maybe $100? Eleanor slid another document across the table. This is a printout of your Venmo history for the past 7 months. According to this, you've sent Mr. Torres approximately $28,000. That's an average of $4,000 per month. Does that seem consistent with reimbursing him for weekly dinners? Silence. Mrs. Penhaligon, I'll ask you again. You've sent Julian Torres $28,000 in 7 months. Why? He needed help. He's starting a business. What kind of business? A wellness consulting business. And you're investing in this business? I'm supporting him. We're partners. Partners. Eleanor wrote something on her legal pad. Are you a business partner, a romantic partner, or both? Chen tried to object. This is outside the scope of... It's absolutely within scope, Eleanor cut him off. Community funds were used to support Mr. Torres's business venture. That makes it discoverable. Mrs. Penhaligon, please answer the question. Vanessa looked at her lawyer. Chen nodded reluctantly. We're in a relationship. While you were still married to Mr. Penhaligon, we were separated. According to the timeline you've provided, you began seeing Mr. Torres in January of this year. You didn't file for separation until August. That's 7 months. Were you living separately from Mr. Penhaligon during those 7 months? No, but... So you were having an affair. We had an open marriage. Arthur actually laughed. He couldn't help it. The sound came out before he could stop it. Eleanor shot him a warning look, but he could see the smile she was suppressing. Did you and Mr. Penhaligon have an agreement in writing regarding an open marriage? Eleanor asked. No, but did you ever discuss with Mr. Penhaligon that you wanted an open marriage? We didn't need to discuss it. He was never home. He was always in his study, reading or working on his investments. He didn't care what I did. So you assumed that because your husband pursued quiet hobbies, you had permission to engage in an extramarital affair and spend community funds supporting your affair partner's business. Objection. Chen was on his feet. You're badgering my client. I'm clarifying her testimony, Eleanor said calmly. Mrs. Penhaligon testified that she believed the marriage was open. I'm simply establishing the basis for that belief. Judge Valdez's voice came through the court reporter's phone. They'd set up a remote appearance for objection resolution. Overruled. Mrs. Penhaligon may answer. Vanessa's eyes were wet now. I needed something more. Arthur is a good man, but he's old. He's set in his ways. I needed vibrancy. I needed passion. And you found that passion with a 28-year-old, Eleanor said. Not a question, a statement. Yes. Did you tell Mr. Penhaligon you were unhappy? He knew. Did you suggest counseling? He wouldn't have gone. Did you ask? Silence. Mrs. Penhaligon, did you ask your husband to attend marriage counseling? No. So rather than communicate your unhappiness, rather than suggest counseling or therapy, rather than have an honest conversation about the state of your marriage, you began an affair, spent $28,000 of community funds on your affair partner, and then served your husband with divorce papers on his birthday. Vanessa was crying now. You're making it sound so cold. I'm just stating the facts, Mrs. Penhaligon. Eleanor's voice was soft, almost kind, which made it worse. Now let's talk about this bank account you opened in your name only. The deposition lasted 6 hours. By the end, Vanessa had admitted to, with Arthur, necessary, Eleanor finished. She needed to commit to her story. Now she's locked in. She can't change her testimony without looking like a liar. She is a liar. Yes, but now we can prove it. Eleanor closed her legal pad. Mediation is in 3 weeks. Between now and then, we're going to prepare a settlement proposal that's going to make her wish she'd been kinder to you." "What are you thinking?" Eleanor smiled. "I'm thinking that dissipation of community assets, fraud and adultery are all factors the court can consider when dividing property. I'm thinking that $80,000 in a secret account plus $28,000 in payments to her boyfriend plus incomplete financial disclosures equals very bad faith. And I'm thinking that a woman who spent $90,000 a year on herself while contributing nothing to the household economy doesn't deserve 50% of assets she didn't help build. So what do we offer? We offer her 20%. And we tell her if she doesn't take it, we're going to trial, where a judge will hear all about her affair, her secret accounts and her perjury. And where she'll be lucky to walk away with 10%. Arthur felt a cold satisfaction settle into his bones. She'll fight. Of course she will. She's young. She thinks she can outlast us, outcry us, outpassion us. Eleanor stood, walked to the window. The sun was setting now, turning Los Angeles into a sea of gold and shadow. But Arthur, here's what she doesn't understand. Crying doesn't work on old judges. Passion doesn't sway people who've seen 1,000 cases like this. And youth is no match for preparation. She turned back to him. We're going to win because we did the work. We tracked every dollar. We documented every lie. We built an airtight case while she was posting selfies and sending emojis to her boyfriend. That's what old means, Arthur. It means we remember that battles aren't won with energy. They're won with evidence. Arthur stood, gathered his files. 3 weeks until mediation. 3 weeks, Eleanor confirmed. Make sure you're ready. Wear your best suit, your most expensive watch. Look like exactly what you are. A man who built something and won't let it be stolen. What will you wear? Eleanor's smile was sharp as a knife. Chanel, and my original grey hair. I want her to see exactly what 62 looks like when it's winning. The mediation took place at a neutral venue, a conference room on the 12th floor of a building in Century City, rented by the hour for exactly this purpose. The room was aggressively neutral. Beige walls, beige carpet, a long table made of laminate, trying to look like wood. The windows overlooked the 405 freeway, where traffic crawled like blood through arteries. 10 a.m. on a Thursday. The air conditioning hummed too loud. Arthur arrived first with Eleanor, 15 minutes early. They set up at one end of the table like generals preparing for battle. Eleanor had brought 3 banker's boxes, each one stuffed with color-coded files. She arranged them on the floor beside her chair with mathematical precision. Arthur carried only a slim leather portfolio and his fountain pen. He wore his best suit, a bespoke 3-piece in charcoal grey from his tailor in London, made 8 years ago and still perfect because quality doesn't age. His shirt was white Sea Island cotton, his tie a deep navy silk. His shoes were Church's, polished to a mirror shine. His silver hair was freshly cut. He looked exactly like what he was, old money that had earned every dollar. Eleanor wore Chanel, black and white tweed, the kind of suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Her silver hair was perfect, her red lipstick was fresh. She wore pearls, real ones, Japanese Akoya, probably 30 years old. She looked like a woman who'd won 100 battles and was about to win one more. The mediator arrived next. His name was Robert Chen, no relation to Vanessa's lawyer, and he was 71 years old, a retired family court judge with 40 years on the bench. He had silver hair, liver spots on his hands, and the kind of face that had seen everything twice. Eleanor had specifically requested him. Old judges understand old tactics, she'd told Arthur, and they hate liars. Judge Chen shook their hands, settled into his seat at the head of the table, and opened his laptop, a concession to modernity, though Arthur noticed he also had a yellow legal pad and 3 sharpened pencils, a man who trusted both systems. "Mr. Penhaligon, Mrs. Sterling, good to see you both." His voice was gravelly, worn smooth by decades of speaking. "I've reviewed the filings. This is quite a case." "It's straightforward, Your Honor," Eleanor said. "My client's spouse engaged in financial misconduct, committed adultery, and made fraudulent disclosures. We're here to resolve this efficiently." "Well, let's see if opposing counsel agrees with your assessment of straightforward." Judge Chen glanced at his watch. They're late. They were, by 12 minutes. When Vanessa finally arrived, she brought an entourage. First came Derek Chen, her lawyer looking harried, carrying a messenger bag that was overstuffed with files, papers jutting out at odd angles. He wore a suit that was nice but not exceptional, probably Brooks Brothers, probably off the rack. His tie was slightly crooked. Then Vanessa herself. She wore white, a calculated choice, Arthur thought, the color of innocence, of victimhood. A white sheath dress, tasteful jewelry, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders. She'd been crying, or wanted to look like she had been. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her makeup carefully smudged, the performance of suffering. And behind her, inexplicably, was Julian. The lifestyle coach wore black jeans, a white button-down with the sleeves rolled up, and white sneakers that probably cost $400. His hair was artfully messy. He carried nothing but his phone. He looked like he was attending a casual Friday meeting, not a legal mediation that would determine his girlfriend's financial future. Judge Chen's eyebrows rose. "Mr. Chen, is this individual a party to these proceedings?" Derek Chen flushed. "No, Your Honor. Mr. Torres is here to provide emotional support to my client." "This is a mediation, not a therapy session." Judge Chen's voice was flat. "Mr. Torres, you can wait in the lobby." "But," Vanessa started. "The lobby, Ms. Penhaligon. These are financial discussions involving marital assets. Non-parties are not permitted." The judge's tone left no room for argument. Julian looked at Vanessa, shrugged and left without a word. Arthur watched him go, noticed that he didn't kiss Vanessa goodbye, didn't squeeze her hand, didn't even seem particularly bothered. He just pulled out his phone and walked out like he'd been asked to leave a coffee shop. Vanessa's face did something complicated, hurt, confusion, the first crack in her armor. Eleanor had noticed too. Arthur saw the small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. "Shall we begin?" Judge Chen asked. They settled into their seats, Vanessa and her lawyer on one side of the table, Arthur and Eleanor on the other, the mediator at the head. The arrangement felt like a trial. In many ways it was. "I've reviewed the pleadings from both sides," Judge Chen began, looking at his notes. "Mrs. Penhaligon is seeking a 50-50 division of community property, plus spousal support of $5,000 per month for 5 years. Mr. Penhaligon is objecting to these terms. Mr. Sterling, would you like to present your settlement proposal?" Eleanor stood. She didn't need to. Mediations were informal, but the gesture commanded attention. She walked to the banker's boxes and lifted the first one onto the table with a heavy thud, then the second, then the third. The sound echoed in the small room. "Your Honor, we've prepared a comprehensive analysis of the financial misconduct in this case." Eleanor opened the first box. Inside were files, dozens of them, each one labeled and tabbed. She pulled out the first stack. "These are bank statements for the past 6 years, showing every deposit and withdrawal from community accounts. We've highlighted in yellow each withdrawal that went to Mrs. Penhaligon's personal expenses." She spread the statements across the table. Pages and pages of yellow highlighting. It looked like a sea of sunshine, marking Vanessa's spending. "The total comes to approximately $543,000 over 6 years. That's $90,500 per year in personal expenses for a woman who contributed no income to the household." Derek Chen leaned forward. "Your Honor, Mrs. Penhaligon was a homemaker. She maintained the household." "Did she?" Eleanor didn't look at him. She was already pulling out another file. "These are receipts for housekeeping services. Mr. Penhaligon paid a housekeeping service $1,200 per month for the past 16 years. These are receipts for landscaping services, $800 per month. These are receipts for a meal delivery service they used 4 nights a week. So what exactly did Mrs. Penhaligon maintain?" Vanessa's lawyer opened his mouth. "Closed it," Eleanor continued. "So now let's discuss the secret bank account." She pulled out another thick file. This one was red-tabbed. In March of last year, Mrs. Penhaligon opened a checking account at Wells Fargo in her name only. Over the course of 11 months, she transferred $83,000 from community accounts into this secret account. She did not disclose this account in her initial financial declaration, or her second. She finally disclosed it in her third amended declaration, and only after we filed a motion for sanctions. Judge Chen was making notes. Mr. Chen, did your client have an explanation for this non-disclosure? Derek Chen shuffled papers. She forgot about the account, Your Honor. She forgot about $83,000. Judge Chen's tone was absolutely neutral, which somehow made it worse. She has a lot of accounts, does she? Eleanor pulled out another file. According to her third amended disclosure, Mrs. Penhaligon has exactly 4 accounts: a joint checking account with Mr. Penhaligon, a joint savings account, a personal credit card, and this Wells Fargo account. 4 accounts. She forgot about one of 4 accounts, an account she was actively depositing money into every single month. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Eleanor wasn't done. But that's not the most interesting part, Your Honor. The most interesting part is what Mrs. Penhaligon did with that money. She pulled out a new stack of papers, blue tabs this time. These are Venmo transaction records. Over the past 7 months, Mrs. Penhaligon sent $28,000 to Julian Torres, her personal trainer, her boyfriend, the man who just left the building. Vanessa flinched. The payments are described as dinner, groceries, gas, and my personal favorite, just because. Eleanor's voice was clinical. But here's what's fascinating. We subpoenaed Mr. Torres's bank records. Derek Chen stood up. Your Honor, that's a violation of... It's a perfectly legal discovery request in a marital dissolution case where community funds were transferred to a third party. Eleanor cut him off. Judge Valdez approved the subpoena 3 weeks ago. Mr. Chen received a copy of the order. Derek Chen sat down slowly. Eleanor pulled out another file, this one black-tabbed. Mr. Torres's bank records show that he deposited Mrs. Penhaligon's payments and then, within days, made his own Venmo payments to 3 different women. Total outgoing payments, approximately $19,000 over the same 7-month period. The room froze. Arthur watched Vanessa's face, watched the blood drain from it, watched her hands grip the edge of the table. I'm sorry, Vanessa whispered. What? Eleanor slid a paper across the table. These are screenshots from Mr. Torres's Venmo account. The payments are to Chelsea Martinez, Amber Liu, and Sophie Kardashian. No relation to the famous family we checked. The descriptions include weekend getaway, shopping spree, and you're worth it. Vanessa stared at the paper. Her hands were shaking. So to summarize, Eleanor continued, her voice never changing tone, never showing mercy, Mrs. Penhaligon took community funds, hid them in a secret account, and then sent that money to her boyfriend, who immediately spent it on other women. This is what she claims she needed vibrancy and passion for. That's not... Vanessa couldn't finish the sentence. Derek Chen put his hand on her arm. Vanessa, don't say anything. But Vanessa wasn't listening to her lawyer. She was staring at the Venmo records. Her whole world was in those screenshots. Her young, passionate, vibrant boyfriend, spending her money, Arthur's money, on other women. Judge Chen cleared his throat. Miss Sterling, is there more? Oh yes, Your Honor, much more. Eleanor's smile was arctic. Let's talk about taxes. She pulled out yet another file, this one red-tabbed with a yellow sticker that said IRS. Arthur felt a cold satisfaction settle in his chest. This was the kill shot. They'd found it 2 weeks ago, and Eleanor had saved it for exactly this moment. The $83,000 Mrs. Penhaligon transferred to her secret account came from the community savings account. That savings account was funded primarily by Mr. Penhaligon's investment income, capital gains, dividends, interest, all reportable income. She paused. Let it sink in. When Mrs. Penhaligon transferred that money, she effectively withdrew it from reported income streams, but she didn't report it on her individual tax return. Because, of course, she doesn't file an individual return. She files jointly with Mr. Penhaligon. So this money simply vanished from a tax perspective. Derek Chen's face had gone pale. Your Honor, my client didn't intend to evade. Intent is irrelevant for tax fraud, Mr. Chen. You know that. Eleanor pulled out another document. This is an analysis prepared by our forensic accountant. It shows that if the IRS were to audit these transfers and determine that they constitute unreported income or improper withdrawal of post-tax funds, Mrs. Penhaligon could be liable for back taxes, penalties, and interest totaling approximately $34,000. She slid the document across the table. Now, we haven't reported this to the IRS yet. We're hopeful this matter can be resolved in mediation. But if Mrs. Penhaligon insists on proceeding to trial, well, Eleanor shrugged. These documents will become part of the public record, and the IRS does monitor court filings. Vanessa looked like she was going to be sick. Judge Chen was writing furiously. Mr. Chen, I assume you'll want time to review these allegations with your client. Yes, Your Honor. I think we should— Let me save you some time, Eleanor interrupted. I have one more item to present. The pièce de résistance, if you will. She reached into the third banker's box and pulled out a massive binder. It was at least 4 inches thick, black leather, with metal rings that clinked as she set it on the table. This, Eleanor said, is every financial transaction in the Penhaligon marriage for the past 6 years. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every credit card charge, every investment, every bill. We're talking about 72 months of financial data, 4,318 pages. She opened the binder. The pages were in plastic sleeves, each one a statement or receipt or record. Highlighted, annotated, cross-referenced. We've organized it chronologically. Each section is tabbed by month and year. We've created an index in the front. We've footnoted every questionable expense. And we've calculated the total dissipation of community assets. She flipped to a page near the back. The total comes to $647,000. That's money Mrs. Penhaligon spent on herself, on her boyfriend, on luxury goods and services that provided no benefit to the community. In legal terms, we call that waste. Eleanor looked up at Judge Chen. California Family Code Section 2602 allows the court to reimburse the community for waste of community assets. We're seeking full reimbursement, $647,000. Derek Chen found his voice. Your Honor, that's more than Mrs. Penhaligon would receive in any equitable distribution. You're asking her to pay my client. No, Eleanor corrected. We're asking for the return of funds she stole. She didn't steal. She took community money, hid it in a secret account, failed to disclose it, sent it to her boyfriend who spent it on other women, and failed to report it for tax purposes. If that's not theft, Mr. Chen, I'd love to hear your definition. The mediator held up his hand. Let's take a 15-minute recess. Mr. Chen, please confer with your client. Ms. Sterling. Mr. Penhaligon, please wait outside. The waste claim is supported by 6 years of documentation, and the boyfriend spending her money on other women. She smiled. That was a gift from the universe. Marcus found it during routine discovery. Julian Torres isn't just stupid. He's openly stupid. He made those Venmo payments public. She looked broken, Arthur observed. Good. Eleanor's voice was hard. She broke you first, Arthur. She served you divorce papers on your birthday. She called you old and boring and past your expiration date. She stole your money to fund an affair with a child who immediately betrayed her. She deserves to feel every ounce of this. Arthur nodded. He felt no pity, only the cold satisfaction of watching someone reap exactly what they'd sown. The door to the mediation room opened. Judge Chen emerged. We're ready. Real tears this time, not the calculated kind from earlier. Her makeup was smudged beyond repair. Her white dress had a wet spot where tears had fallen. Her hands twisted in her lap. Derek Chen looked exhausted. Your Honor, my client would like to discuss settlement terms. I'm listening, Eleanor said. Chen took a breath. Mrs. Penhaligon is willing to accept a 40-60 split of community assets, with the larger share going to Mr. Penhaligon. She'll waive spousal support, and she'll return the $83,000 from the secret account. Eleanor didn't even pause. No. Ms. Sterling, here are our terms. Eleanor pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was typed, formal, already prepared. Mrs. Penhaligon receives 20% of community assets after reimbursement for waste. Given that community assets total approximately $3.4 million and waste totals $647,000, We're looking at net community assets of $2.75 million. 20% is $550,000. She slid the paper across the table. Mrs. Penhaligon waives all spousal support. She returns the $83,000 in the secret account immediately. She pays half of Mr. Penhaligon's attorney fees, which currently total $96,000. That's $48,000. She takes full responsibility for any tax liability arising from the unreported transfers, and she signs a non-disparagement agreement. She doesn't talk about this case, doesn't post about it on social media, doesn't give interviews. Derek Chen was reading the paper. This is, Your Honor, this is unconscionable. This would leave my client with less than $400,000 after fees and reimbursements. Your client stole money, committed tax fraud, and perjured herself in her financial disclosures, Eleanor said flatly. $400,000 is generous. The alternative is trial, where she'll be lucky to get 10% after the judge hears about the boyfriend, the other women, the secret accounts, and the tax issues. Oh, and where those issues become part of the public record, which means the IRS will definitely take an interest. Vanessa spoke, her voice hoarse. What about Julian? Eleanor's expression didn't change. What about him? Was he really spending my money on other women? Every dollar you sent him. Eleanor pulled out the Venmo records again, spread them on the table. Chelsea Martinez received $6,000. Amber Liu received $8,000. Sophie Kardashian received $5,000. You were funding his lifestyle with 3 women simultaneously. You were, as the kids say, one of several. Vanessa made a sound, a broken animal sound. Arthur watched her, felt nothing. This was the woman who'd called him too old, who'd mocked his reading, his quiet evenings, his preference for quality over flash. This was the woman who'd chosen youth over experience, passion over stability, Instagram likes over actual respect, and she'd chosen wrong. Your Honor, Derek Chen said desperately, can we have another recess? I need to discuss this with my client. You have 10 minutes, Judge Chen said, and Mr. Chen, I've been doing this for 40 years. I can tell you right now that if this goes to trial, your client is going to lose. Ms. Sterling has built a case that would make a federal prosecutor weep with joy. Your client concealed assets, committed perjury, possibly committed tax fraud, and spent community funds on an extramarital affair. No judge in California is going to look kindly on that. If I were you, I'd advise your client to take this settlement. Chen nodded miserably. Yes, Your Honor. They left again. Arthur and Eleanor returned to the hallway. She's going to take it, Eleanor predicted. How can you be sure? Because she's scared. The boyfriend betrayed her. The tax fraud is real. The waste claim is documented. And she knows that if this goes to trial, everyone will know what she did. Her friends, her family, her Instagram followers. Eleanor smiled. Vanessa cares about image. This settlement lets her keep some dignity. She can tell people she wanted out of the marriage, got a settlement, and moved on with her life. If we go to trial, the world will know she's a cheating, lying, tax-evading fool who got played by a 28-year-old con artist. You really think Julian is a con artist? Arthur, he convinced your wife to give him $28,000 while sleeping with 3 other women. What would you call him? Fair point. She read the settlement agreement with dull eyes. Arthur wondered if she was even processing the words. Probably not. She was broken. The fight had gone out of her the moment she saw those Venmo records. Young people always thought passion was strength, but passion burned hot and fast. Discipline, preparation, experience, those were the real weapons. Those were what won wars. Judge Chen reviewed the agreement. Mrs. Penhaligon, do you understand the terms of this settlement? Yes, she whispered. Do you agree to them voluntarily? Yes. Do you wish to consult further with your attorney before signing? She looked at Derek Chen. He gave her a small, sad nod. What else could he do? His client had torpedoed her own case. No, Vanessa said. I'll sign. Eleanor produced 2 pens, both fountain pens, both Mont Blanc, both expensive. She offered one to Vanessa. Vanessa took it. Her hand shook as she signed her name on the signature line. The ink was black, permanent. The signature looked like it was written by someone drowning. She signed 4 copies, one for Arthur, one for her, one for the court, one for the mediator's records. When she was done, she set down the pen and stood. Didn't look at Arthur, didn't look at Eleanor, didn't look at anyone. "I need to go," she said. "Of course," Judge Chen said gently. "Mr. Chen will file the appropriate paperwork with the court. The settlement will be effective immediately." Vanessa walked to the door, stopped, turned back. For a moment, Arthur thought she might say something. Apologize, maybe. Or curse at him. Or cry. But she didn't. She just looked at him. Really looked at him, maybe for the first time in years. "You were always too good at this," she said quietly. "The planning, the details. I thought it made you boring, but it just made you better." Then she left. Derek Chen gathered his papers, shook hands mechanically, and followed his client out. The door closed behind them with a soft click. Judge Chen stood. "Well, that was one of the more clear-cut mediations I've handled. Ms. Sterling, excellent work. Mr. Penhaligon, congratulations. You'll receive the court-approved settlement within 14 days. He left them alone in the conference room. Arthur and Eleanor sat in silence for a long moment. 3 bankers' boxes of evidence still sat on the floor. 6 years of financial records. Proof of every lie, every betrayal, every dollar stolen. "How do you feel?" Eleanor asked. Arthur considered the question. "Vindicated," he said finally, "and tired. Justice is exhausting." Eleanor began packing up the binder, the files, the documents. "But it's also necessary. What she did to you, calling you old, serving you papers on your birthday, stealing your money, that needed consequences. You gave her consequences." "We gave her consequences. Fair correction." Eleanor smiled. "Arthur, you know what the best part of this case was. Tell me." "Watching her realize that old doesn't mean weak. We didn't win because we yelled louder or cried more convincingly or posted better on social media. We won because we did the work. We tracked every dollar. We found every account. We documented every lie. That's what experience looks like. That's what 62 years of living looks like when you've spent it learning instead of just existing." Arthur stood, helped her pack the boxes. "What happens to her now?" "She pays you the $83,000 within 30 days. She pays your attorney fees. She takes her $400,000 and tries to rebuild her life." Eleanor shrugged. "Maybe she learns from this. Maybe she doesn't. That's not our problem anymore." "And Julian?" "Julian is already gone, I guarantee it. Men like that don't stick around when the money dries up. He'll be on to the next middle-aged woman with a bank account and daddy issues within a week." They carried the boxes to the elevator, rode down in silence, walked out into the Los Angeles afternoon. The sun was bright. The air smelled like exhaust and jasmine. The city moved around them, indifferent to their victory. Eleanor's car was in the garage, a Mercedes S-Class, black, elegant. Arthur walked her to it. "Send me your final bill," he said. "I will. Though honestly, Arthur, this one was almost fun. Not every case lets me destroy someone so thoroughly while remaining completely ethical." She opened her trunk, loaded the boxes. "What will you do now? Travel? Date? Buy a sports car?" Arthur laughed. "I'm 62, Eleanor, not dead." "Exactly my point." She closed the trunk. "You've got decades left. Good decades. Don't waste them mourning a marriage that was already over. Find someone who appreciates what you've built, what you are. Someone my own age. Someone with a brain. Age is negotiable. Stupidity isn't." Eleanor extended her hand. "It's been a pleasure, Arthur." He shook it. "The pleasure was mine. And Eleanor, thank you. For everything. Thank you for trusting an old woman to fight your battle. You're not old. You're experienced." Her smile could have lit the city. "Same thing, darling. Same thing." She got in her car and drove away. Arthur stood in the parking garage alone with his thoughts. Somewhere in this city, Vanessa was probably calling Julian, probably discovering that his number was disconnected, probably realizing that she'd traded a man who valued her for a boy who valued her wallet. Somewhere in this city, young people were making the same mistakes Vanessa had made, thinking that youth was power. That passion was worth more than preparation. That old meant defeated. They'd learn, eventually. The way everyone learned. Through consequences. Arthur got in his Audi, started the engine, pulled out of the parking garage into the California sun. He was 62 years old, and he'd just won.